If you were rejected as a child, this video is for you. This is a raw message that I've been putting off sharing for the past 2 months. You've probably seen that I haven't been very active lately. I haven't done very many videos. And the truth is that I've been struggling with something personally, and I've realized that I'm now ready to share it. And I always feel that we all hold a different piece of the puzzle. And I want you to know that if you're struggling with something, you don't need to be ashamed of it. You don't need to feel like you're a burden to others, or that your grief or pain will overwhelm them. Because really, as I said, we all hold a different piece of the puzzle, and so we all have something valuable to give and to contribute. And this beautiful analogy came into my life this week, and that is that the things that we perceive as our stumbling blocks, as our biggest obstacles to success, are actually these huge boulders, these things that we feel are in our way, are actually the stepping stones to crossing over that challenge and to success. And so what I've been dealing with really is the wound of rejection. And this is a deep wound that I really was inflicted on me as a child. And it very often is something that we get as a child. If you were rejected by your mother, by your primary carer as a young child, as a baby, then there's that close, in most relationships, there's this close feeling of love and support and attachment and connection between a baby and its mother, right? And there's nothing that mother wouldn't do for that child. They love them so deeply and fiercely, and we've all heard of a fierce mother's love in protecting their offspring, like a lioness and a cub. As a child, you're meant to love your parent unconditionally. And Mother's Day has come around, and there's all these things, these times of the year where we need to celebrate this relationship. But what if you never received that loving relationship? What if you were rejected at a very young age? How does that make you feel? And what does that go on to impact your life? In what way does it impact your life? And so for me, I had a very difficult time as a young child. I was rejected. I do have the mother wound. And it is something that I've worked so profoundly to heal and to transform on so many levels throughout my life at different stages. And I really do feel I've made so much profound progress. But I want to just share with you a little bit about my story, because I think that you will really resonate with it and get something out of it. And so my name is Nicoleen, and I am the Flame Keeper, and I'm a spiritual coach, and I help people heal from trauma. And in particular, I help them to rebuild their self-worth so that they can become empowered to live passionate, fulfilling lives. And a lot of what my purpose is helping people to heal from the mother wound, to heal from rejection and abandonment, to heal from betrayal. Because this insidious virus, if you like, of this energy, it really affects your life in so many different ways. And so for me, there were lots of different things that manifested from this wound. And one was, as a young child, if you feel rejected, if your carer isn't there for you, if they're not present and they're not able to give you care and attention, your very survival depends on that. You really are quite powerless as a young child. And so what will happen is that you will tune yourself to the energy field and to the needs of your carer. And if your carer is unpredictable and they can be violent at times and they are aggressive and dangerous to you, and you're never really sure where you stand with them, then what happens is that you live your life really walking on eggshells. And you tune into their needs, and because it's a matter of life and death, you end up losing yourself in the process, because what ends up happening is you're so attuned to their needs. You're like, oh, are they in a bad mood today? What can I do to remediate this? What about if I make them a cup of tea and I bring them a cup of tea in bed? You know, is that going to be okay? And then if I've been good and I've picked up all the toys on my floor, will they make me lunch today? You know, or am I going to get the standard response of what you're hungry? Oh, well, there's an apple in the fridge, you know, like, or go to the shops and buy bread, you know. It's not my responsibility to feed you. Like, what is the response that you're going to get? And forget about any closeness, forget about having any reassurance. If you're scared, or if you are fearful, or if something has upset you at school, or you're being left out in the class, forget about any kind of emotional support or any physical touch. None of that is forthcoming or coming your way. So what happens is that because you are constantly tuning to the other person's needs, you are losing yourself, and you're losing sight of your own needs too. And so this process goes on into adult life, right? It's a subconscious pattern that we develop, and it runs on autopilot, and it really affects every area of your life, because what will happen is that in your energy field will come people who are also looking to take advantage of you, who don't have your best needs at heart. Because you're vulnerable and you're open, you'll overgive. So you'll become a people pleaser, and what will end up happening is you'll deplete yourself to a point where you're completely and utterly exhausted. There's nothing left for you to give, and then the user or the abuser will spit you out like a dried up husk and leave you behind, and off they will go to the next victim to suck them dry. And this becomes a process, and periodically you'll find yourself running circles around this person, trying to please them, using up all your energy in the process, and then ending up in bed, collapsed. And this has been the pattern of throughout my life. And what actually ended up happening for me was that I became so ill. I ended up in bed for 10 years. I was chronically and critically ill. I was in a wheelchair at times. I lost my ability to speak. I was slurring. I couldn't formulate a proper sentence. I had severe brain fog. I was in excruciating pain all the time. And I went to many different doctors. I spent, so much money, so many specialists and tests and so on. And I was on so much medication. I was on 42 tablets every single day. I had multiple diagnoses, some of which were Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. I had all the symptoms of dementia and severe brain fog, vertigo, POTS, you name it, really. I had it all. And you may ask yourself, well, how did you end up in this state? And really, what I have to say is that toxic energy that I was carrying from childhood, that feeling of not being good enough and needing to put others' needs first, and that constant living in fight or flight, that your nervous system being so dysregulated and you're always on edge, all of that had profound implications on my health. And then on top of that, being an alcoholic for 12 years because of wanting to avoid severe trauma, childhood trauma, sexual abuse when I was really young, when I was 4, and then this ongoing narcissistic abuse from my mother, coupled with a very dysfunctional childhood, living inside a cult from the age of 4 to 16. So there were all these things which added up together, but they had not just a spiritual implication, but also an energetic implication. And more than that, they had a physical implication, which is why I became so ill. Because systemic viruses within my body were able to grow and bloom and thrive because of the way I lived my life. The constant flow of adrenaline, being in that constant fight or flight stage, that was creating more illness for me. It was damaging my organs. It was also fuel for those viruses and those pathogens living in my body. And then, of course, coupled with the fact that I was not taking care of my own needs, I would push myself to the absolute end. And so these patterns, these subconscious patterns, will continue to play out in our lives. And for me, I took on a job which didn't suit me. It suited my creative side. I became an art director. It was deeply competitive, very challenging work. I loved the intellectual side of it, but the hours were really, really long, and the potential to be abused was very, very high. And so actually this was serving my soul growth in a sense, because what would happen is that I would continue to feel not good enough, even though I was winning some awards and I was doing well in the creative department and moving up, even became a creative director, but I constantly saw myself as not good enough. It was a big party scene, so it enabled me to continue to be an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic because I was trying to avoid these really deep, painful feelings that would well up inside of me, and I just wanted to shut them out. And so it created this environment where I was able to deplete myself repeatedly, living in this very high stress environment, constant adrenaline rush to the body, feeding those viruses in my body, the competitive nature of it, where you were constantly compared to each other and always found lacking, and of course the very high potential of abuse, where you would work your 70-hour weeks, get paid for 30 of them, leave at 7 p.m. at night, and everyone raised their eyebrows saying, oh, what, half day today, you know, because it was custom that you were there till sort of midnight every day of the week, and really get burnt out. And then when you were burnt out, they would throw you out the door and get the next person in, and that would be it. And so this was the subconscious pattern that was playing out for me. And I did a lot of inner healing actually when I became very, very severely ill, and I was in bed for 10 years. And although it was a very traumatic time, as I'm sure you can probably relate, there was a lot of potential and for growth there, and actually a really deep healing did take place for me, which I'm so profoundly grateful for, because it changed the course of my life. It led me to become a spiritual coach and mentor, and to help others. And this really is the purpose of any challenge, I feel, is for you to come through the other side with those gifts. And I really do feel like I've done that. And I've done so much profound healing around the relationship that I have with my mother too. And I just wanted to return to this subject really, because I want to talk about the rejection wound and the mother wound again. And that is because, sort of during this time where I was going through this really, really difficult period when I was so sick, I had a small toddler. I had had a series of miscarriages. I was on antidepressants. I'd been in suicide prevention wards. I had suicide plans, 3 different ways, all sorts of things. I was really struggling. I was going to lots of different psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, counselors, still every now and then trying to block out things with drinking. And what ended up happening was I got very, very ill during the pregnancy. My immune system collapsed, and I ended up in hospital. And I remember the one day I was just I couldn't walk because I was in a wheelchair, but I'd gotten myself to the edge of the bed, and I was sitting there, and I was just kind of sitting there, and And I was so down, I was so exhausted, and I felt so sick. And obviously my body language was just conveying that, because I was kind of just drooping there. And a nurse came in, and her compassion just kind of came at me. And I get a bit emotional about it, because, you know, sometimes when you've been starved of love and someone offers you love, it can be a bit overwhelming. So anyway, this happened, and she came to me and she just said, oh, you know, I could just see you in so much pain, and I just wanted to reach out and say, you know, like, what can we do? Is there anything more that we can do for you? And then she said, is there anyone we can call? You know, is there anyone that could come and help you? What about your mother? And that was when I sort of said, oh, you know, I actually can't call my mother, because what will happen is she sees me really as a food source. So she comes, she's going to drain me, and I am so weak right now, I can't actually even consider that. And she actually got it, and she was like, wow, yeah, okay. Yeah, we always have this picture in our minds, and we think, oh, you know, mothers, and they're going to be the solution, and they're the one that cares for us and loves us. And it's not always the case. It's not always true. And actually, and some people can't fathom that, but I want you to know that if this is something you've experienced, I do understand, and I do get it. And she was like, yeah, okay, I get it. And she was sort of maybe one of the first people who ever did get it for me. And that was actually such a relief for me. If you can resonate with this, and if this has been your experience, I just want you to know that I get it too. And I'm here for you. And you're not crazy, and you don't need to feel blame or guilt. It's actually just about accepting the limitations of the relationship and seeing it as it is, not as we wish it to be. Pain comes from resistance. It's from not accepting what is. But when we look at it and we accept it, that is when we can heal it. And so I had to cut my mother out of my life for a period of years. It was about 3 years while I did profound inner healing work. And when I did allow her back into my life, it was on my terms, and it was from a healed perspective. And what actually happened was that subconsciously I created this barrier, or this boundary, if you like, where I didn't expect her to be my mother. I didn't expect a loving, close relationship with her any longer. I actually just expected, what I decided is that she would be my aunt. She could come back into my life, and I could accept her for her faults, and also for her the good things about her, because no person is ever wholly bad. Everyone has good traits and bad traits. We're a mix. They have positives and they have weaknesses. And so in this way, when I allowed her back in, I didn't expect, and I didn't want the thing from her that she couldn't give me, which was this close, loving relationship, this support, and this mother-daughter relationship. Instead, I expected a sort of an acquaintance relationship, which was a little more distant, but still related in some way, and there's still some sort of shared feeling and generosity of spirit there. This relationship with an aunt. And this actually did help transform and heal my relationship with my mother for a long time. And then what I'd like to talk about now is what happened to me this year. I'd done a lot of profound healing work, and I was well on my spiritual path. I became an energy healer. I healed myself with a medical medium protocol. I became a medical medium practitioner. I started treating people with trauma and low self-worth, and helping them rebuild their lives in one-on-one coaching. And I've been doing this successfully for a while, and then my mother, who had been through cancer and lives in another country, she lives in South Africa, announced that she was going to come on this trip and wanted to come and stay with me this year. And so I did. I felt like I was ready. I felt like, yes, I can handle this. This is, I can hold my own against this in this situation. And it's sort of a test for me to see how far I've grown and where I'm up to. And so I agreed, and she came, and I did my usual. I actually think I did so much better than I ever have done before in holding my own space, holding my life together, holding my frame, trying to keep my needs up there, instead of just kind of being sucked dry. I was like a vacuum. And it was a big balancing act, and there were still challenges. There was still that little aspect of the little girl in me that was still looking for validation and support. And I remember one day in particular where it kind of came to a head, where I had been running myself ragged, trying to keep the house together, trying to keep my business going, trying to pacify my mother, trying to take care of her, entertain her, run her around, all those sorts of things. And I felt like I'd been doing a pretty good job. I have some challenges with my family, particularly with my son, who is autistic, and he doesn't respond well to change. He doesn't respond well to moving from one activity to the other. He has high sensitivity and that sorts of things. So he's very sensitive to his environment. And when he gets overwhelmed, he'll lash out. And the reason I'm explaining this is just to give you a little context of what was going on in the background. But I'd been taking my mother all over the place and doing all these things. And I had we live in a very beautiful area. We'd been doing lots of touristy stuff. And I remember I was driving to one of the local towns, and I had her in the car. It was just the two of us, and I made the mistake of asking her, I said, "So Mom, how has your holiday been so far?" And that was really the little girl inside of me saying, have I done a good job? Because I feel like I've done a good job, can you give me a little bit of praise? Can you say thank you? Or can you say that was a great meal that you made? Or I really enjoyed seeing that museum? Or your kids are beautiful, Or can you give me something? Can you give me, I like the new area that you live in. You've made a great go of your life, or anything. Could you give me anything? And of course, she couldn't give me anything. She couldn't give me not even a tiny drop. And so when I asked her, her response was, well, of course, you've done lots of things for me, and I'm really grateful. But I think that the way your son treats you is disgusting. So she couldn't even finish the sentence. It was the thank you was squished into the first 5 seconds, and then the rest of it was the vitriol, the real message, the real energy. And it can be so exhausting, right? It's painful. It's so painful. And it just stirred up that old wound in me where I felt so unsupported and unseen, and like I didn't matter, and nothing I did was good enough. And this is what I expected, to be honest. This is what I knew would ultimately happen. And I'd been trying to steer myself away from asking any questions like that. Trying to steer away from asking for anything. And that little part of me just couldn't do it. And it really sparked a sort of painful episode where it came to a head for me. And I realized, you see, my mother had been on this trip where she had gone to see my brother who lives in Sweden before coming to see me. And he and I are very different. We live very different lives. His ways of doing things are very different. But my mother has always, in a narcissistic relationship, there's generally always a golden child and then a scapegoat. And he was the golden child and I was the scapegoat. So everything that he did was wonderful, and everything that I did was absolutely a disaster and terrible. And I don't know if you can relate to that. But he works for a bank and he works from home, and he's very wealthy and all the rest, and proper, and does things the right way, and I do things the wrong way, and I'm bohemian, and I'm walking around with no shoes on, and I'm an artist, and I live in a hippie area, and so there's always been this judgment. But during her stay with him, he had actually just ignored her the whole time that she was there. He would work his 9-to-5 job. He would go into the office and shut the door. He would not take her for a walk or spend any time with her. When he would come out, it would be dinner time. He would make a meal grudgingly for her, not sit with her. They would eat the meal in front of the TV, and he would be on the screens the whole time trying to block her out. And he didn't take any time off or do any kind of excursions, or probably did an excursion maybe once or twice on the weekend. But she lives in South Africa. He hasn't seen her for years. She's just battled cancer. He could have put aside some of his precious time and done something with her. And he didn't. He didn't do any of that. But here I was, myself, sort of stalling my life and trying to do so much for her, up and beyond what I was physically capable of, because I was exhausted, and yet he was still the golden child. And this was really like put in my face, and I was like, wow. And I got so angry, and I remembered I just erupted, and I said, Michael can ignore you the whole time, and yet he's still the golden child, and I just think it's pathetic. And I left the room, and I realized, oh, I wasn't talking to her. I was talking to myself. I was saying, it is pathetic. It is pathetic how much you do to try and earn love and validation when you're never going to get it. You're never, ever going to get it, and no standard that you can hold yourself to will ever be high enough. So it's ludicrous. I mean, it's like chalk and cheese, two complete opposites and approaches, and yet, my approach will still not be valid. I'll still not be loved, and I still won't be appreciated. And I guess my big message for you is that when we look outside of ourselves for this love and appreciation, we are going to, if we don't have it within us for ourselves, we are never going to see it mirrored in our external world. Okay? There is nothing that you can do to earn it. You have to give it to yourself. It is a healing experience to give it to yourself and to realize that you are worthy of love and you do deserve it, and no one should be able to take it from you. And so I just wanted to send you love, and if you are struggling right now, know that you can reach out to me. I have one-on-one coaching spots available, and it would be my absolute honor to walk with you on this path. Thank you.